Pain is supposed to break you. Mine was about to break them instead. Because while my own children whispered about letting me suffer until I signed everything away, I was pressing record. My name is Susan. I'm 72 years old, and I never thought I'd be sitting here telling you this story. But if there's one thing I've learned in all my years, it's that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. Before I get into what happened, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. There's something comforting about knowing I'm not alone in this, that my story might reach someone who needs to hear it. So let me take you back to where it all started. 15 months ago, I was diagnosed with severe spinal stenosis. If you've never heard of it, count yourself lucky. It's a narrowing of the spaces in your spine, and it puts pressure on the nerves. The pain, well, there aren't really words for it. Some days it felt like someone was driving hot railroad spikes through my lower back and down my legs. Other days, I couldn't even stand up straight. My doctor, Dr. Morrison, prescribed me pain medication, not the kind you take and forget about, the serious kind, the kind that came with warnings and strict dosing schedules. But it was the only thing that made life bearable. Without it, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't walk. I certainly couldn't take care of myself. I'd been a widow for 8 years by then. My husband Frank passed from a heart attack, sudden and shocking, leaving me with our home in Riverside, California, a comfortable savings account, and a few investment properties we'd bought over the years. Frank and I had built our life together from nothing. We got married in 1975, 2 kids fresh out of high school with big dreams and empty pockets. Frank worked construction during the day and went to trade school at night to get his contractor's license. I worked as a waitress, then started catering small parties on weekends from our tiny apartment kitchen. We saved every penny. When Frank got his contractor's license in 1982, we bought our first home, a fixer-upper in Riverside that he renovated himself. I still remember him working on that house until midnight most nights, determined to make it perfect for our family. The catering business grew slowly but steadily. Word of mouth in Riverside was powerful. Before long, I was catering weddings, corporate events, anniversary parties. Frank's contracting business took off too. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable, secure. In 1995, we bought our first rental property, a small duplex that needed work. Frank renovated it during his off hours, and we rented out both units. Then came a second property in 1999, a third in 2004. Each one carefully chosen, carefully renovated, carefully managed. These weren't get-rich-quick schemes. They were our retirement plan, our security blanket, built through decades of hard work and sacrifice. Frank never got to enjoy that retirement. The heart attack came in 2017, out of nowhere. 1 minute he was fine, the next he was gone. The doctors said it was quick, that he didn't suffer. But I suffered. I still do. We had 2 children, my son Derek, 45, and my daughter Nicole, 42. Derek lived about 20 minutes away with his wife Amber. He worked in sales, though he changed jobs more often than I changed my bed sheets, always chasing the next big opportunity, the next promotion that would solve all his problems. Frank used to worry about Derek's stability, his tendency to overextend himself financially. More than once, we'd helped him out of tight spots. A car repossession here, a missed mortgage payment there. We never asked to be paid back. He was our son. Amber didn't work. She spent most of her time at yoga studios and nail salons, at least from what I could tell. She drove a BMW, we'd help them finance. They had 2 teenage boys who I rarely saw, my grandchildren who were always too busy with sports or friends to visit their grandmother. Nicole lived closer, just 10 minutes from my house. She was a dental hygienist, divorced for 5 years from a man who'd cheated on her repeatedly. I'd supported her through that divorce, helped her financially and emotionally. She seemed more attentive than Derek, visiting twice a week, calling to check on me. She'd bring groceries sometimes, sit with me, and watch our favorite cooking shows. I thought it was out of love. I was so naive. Nicole had one daughter named Emma who was away at college in Northern California studying environmental science. Emma was bright, ambitious, nothing like her mother or uncle. She called me every week just to chat, to tell me about her classes and her friends. She reminded me of myself at that age, full of hope and determination. When Frank died, both Derek and Nicole seemed devastated. They helped with the funeral arrangements, sat with me through those first awful weeks. Derek handled some of the paperwork. Nicole stayed overnight several times when I couldn't bear to be alone. I thought we'd grown closer through grief. I thought losing Frank had reminded them what family meant. I was wrong about so many things. When the diagnosis came, both of them seemed concerned. They offered to help with doctor appointments, with grocery shopping, with medication pickups. Derek even suggested I give him a key to the house, just in case of emergencies. I gave him one without a second thought. Looking back now, I can see exactly when things changed. It was subtle at first. About 6 months into my diagnosis, Derek started asking questions about my finances. "Mom, do you have everything organized? In case something happens? Are all your accounts in order? Have you thought about updating your will?" I brushed it off. He was worried about his mother, I told myself. It was natural. Then Nicole started too. "Mom, managing all these properties must be so stressful with your condition. Have you ever thought about selling? Or maybe transferring ownership to make things easier?" I had a will, of course. Frank and I had drawn one up years ago. Everything was split evenly between Derek and Nicole. The house, the savings, the 3 rental properties. All of it divided right down the middle. Fair and square. But I was very much alive and had no intention of going anywhere anytime soon. About 3 months ago, things took a turn. My pain got worse. Much worse. Dr. Morrison adjusted my medication, increasing the dosage slightly. He also prescribed physical therapy and suggested some lifestyle modifications, but the medication was my lifeline. I kept my pills in the kitchen cabinet, right next to the coffee maker. The same place I'd kept them for months. I took them at the same times every day, morning, afternoon, and before bed. The routine was sacred because the pain was relentless. Then one morning, I went to take my medication, and the bottle was nearly empty. I could have sworn I'd just refilled it 3 days before. I counted the remaining pills. Only 4 left. That didn't make sense. I should have had at least 20. I must have miscounted at the pharmacy, I told myself, though deep down I knew I hadn't. I called in for a refill, but because of the type of medication it was, I couldn't get more until the scheduled refill date. The pharmacist was apologetic, but firm. "Mrs. Patterson, these medications are controlled substances. Your insurance won't cover another refill for another week, and even paying out of pocket, the prescription shows it's too soon." Those were the longest 6 days of my life. The pain was unbearable. I rationed the 4 pills I had left, cutting them in half, spacing them out as much as I could tolerate. I barely slept. I could hardly move. I spent most of my time in my recliner, trying not to cry. Derek and Nicole both visited during that time. I told them about the missing medication, about the pain I was in. Derek frowned. "Mom, are you sure you're keeping track? Sometimes with these medications, people lose count." Nicole nodded in agreement. "It's easy to get confused, especially if you're in pain. Maybe you took more than you thought?" I knew I hadn't. I've been sharp as a tack my whole life. I know how to count pills, but their certainty made me doubt myself, just for a moment. When I finally got my refill, I was so relieved I nearly cried at the pharmacy counter. I came home, took my dose, and carefully placed the bottle back in the cabinet. 2 weeks later, it happened again. This time, I knew something was wrong. I'd been counting obsessively. I knew exactly how many pills should be in that bottle. When I opened it, a third of them were gone. Someone was stealing my medication. But who? I lived alone. The only people with keys were Derek and Nicole. The only people who visited regularly were Derek and Nicole. My own children. No, I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. There had to be another explanation. I decided to test my theory. I moved the medication to a different cabinet, one in the bathroom upstairs. I didn't tell anyone. I counted the pills carefully, 32 exactly, and I marked the date and count in a small notebook I kept. 3 days later, Derek stopped by unexpectedly. "Just checking on you, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. He went to the kitchen, got himself a glass of water. I watched him carefully from my recliner in the living room, where I'd been lying with a heating pad on my back. He was in there longer than necessary for just getting water. When he came back out, his expression was odd, confused, maybe frustrated. After he left, I went upstairs, slowly, painfully climbing each step. I opened the bathroom cabinet and counted. 32, all still there. So it was him, or Nicole, or both of them, taking my medication to force me into pain, into vulnerability. But why? I'm not stupid, and I'm not helpless. Pain may have aged my body, but my mind was still sharp. If my children were stealing my medication, they had a reason, and I was going to find out what it was. I went to the store, well, I ordered online because I could barely drive anymore, and bought a small voice-activated recording device, the kind that looks like a pen. It could record for hours and had a long battery life. I also bought a larger recorder that I could hide somewhere less obvious. I placed one recorder in the kitchen, hidden behind the cookie jar on top of the refrigerator. I placed another one in the living room, tucked between books on the shelf. I kept the pen recorder in my pocket whenever either of them visited. For a week, nothing happened. Just normal conversations, normal visits. I started to think maybe I was paranoid, that maybe there was some other explanation. Then everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd just taken my medication, more aware than ever of the relief it brought. I was in my recliner, drowsy, when I heard the front door open. Derek's voice called out, "Mom, you awake?" I kept my eyes closed, my breathing steady. The medication made me genuinely tired, and I'd learned that sometimes it was easier to rest than to entertain. "She's out," Derek said, but not to me. Nicole's voice responded, "Perfect. We need to talk." My heart rate picked up, but I kept still, kept breathing slowly and evenly. The pen recorder was in the pocket of the cardigan I was wearing. I could hear them moving into the kitchen. "She's not going to last much longer like this," Nicole said. "Did you see how much weight she's lost? She can barely walk." "That's kind of the point," Derek replied. His voice was cold, calculating, nothing like the concerned son who'd visited me days before. "The worse she gets, the more willing she'll be to make changes." "And you're sure the medication thing is working?" "Of course it's working. Have you seen her? She's desperate, in constant pain. A few more weeks of this, and she'll sign anything we put in front of her." I felt ice run through my veins. They were doing this on purpose. My own children were causing me agony, deliberately making me suffer. "I still think we should have just talked to her about updating the will," Nicole said, though her voice lacked conviction. Derek laughed. It was a harsh sound. "Right. And have her split everything evenly again. Nicole, those rental properties alone are worth over $2 million. Plus the house, the savings accounts, the investments. We're talking about nearly $3.5 million total. I'm not sharing that 50-50 when I'm the one who's been doing all the work. You've been doing all the work? I'm the one who visits twice a week. And I'm the one who's been researching care facilities, who's been talking to lawyers, who came up with this whole plan. You think Mom's just going to hand over power of attorney because you bring her soup? Get real." There was a pause. When Nicole spoke again, her voice was quieter. "So what's the timeline?" "Another few weeks of the medication issue should do it. She'll be desperate enough by then. I've already drafted new documents. We get her to sign power of attorney over to me, claiming it's just to help manage things while she's unwell. Then we start transferring assets. She's so out of it from pain and lack of medication, she won't even realize what's happening until it's too late. And if she realizes, if she fights it, then we commit her. We have documentation of her forgetting her medication, losing pills. We can make a case for early dementia, lack of capacity. Either way, we get control." I heard someone opening the refrigerator, the clink of bottles. They were making themselves at home while planning my destruction. "What about Henderson?" Nicole asked. "Won't he question why she's suddenly signing everything over?" "Henderson won't be involved. I found a different lawyer, someone who doesn't know the family. As far as he's concerned, this is just an elderly woman making reasonable arrangements for her care. I'll have medical documentation to support it. Her pain management issues, the confusion about medications. It'll all look legitimate." "You've really thought this through." "Someone had to. Look, Nicole, we've been good kids. We've visited, we've helped, we've been there. But at some point, we need to think about our own futures. Mom's going to end up in a nursing home eventually anyway. This way, at least the money stays in the family instead of being drained by medical bills." "She's not dying, Derek. She has spinal stenosis, not cancer. Not yet. But she's 72. How many good years does she really have left? Why should we wait until there's nothing left to inherit?" Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear how this story ends, because what happened next will shock you. "What about Emma?" Nicole asked. "Your boys? Don't you think they'd want their grandmother to be comfortable?" "They'll get their inheritance when we're gone. Right now, this is about securing our future. Amber's been on me for months about upgrading the house, and you've been complaining about your car. This is our ticket. Let her suffer," Nicole said finally. I could hear the resignation in her voice. "She'll sign everything over soon enough." They talked for another 10 minutes about specifics. Which lawyer to use, how to structure the power of attorney, which assets to transfer first. Every word was recorded, every piece of their plan captured in crystal clarity. When they finally left, I stayed in that recliner for another hour. Not from pain, not from medication, but from shock, from heartbreak, from a grief so profound it felt like Frank had died all over again. These were my babies. The children I'd carried, raised, loved unconditionally. I'd given them everything I could. Frank and I had paid for their educations, helped with down payments on their first homes, been there for every milestone and every crisis. And this is what they'd become. Once the shock wore off, something else took its place. Not anger, though there was plenty of that. Not even hurt, though that pain went deeper than anything in my spine. It was clarity. I spent that night listening to the recording over and over, making sure I'd heard what I thought I heard, making sure it was clear enough, explicit enough. It was. Every word incriminating, every sentence damning. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not the family lawyer we'd used for years. Derek had mentioned him by name in their conversation, which told me he'd already been consulted. No, I called a new lawyer, a woman named Patricia Hoffman who specialized in elder law and estate planning. Her office was in San Diego, far enough that Derek and Nicole wouldn't randomly run into her. "Mrs. Patterson," she said when I explained why I was calling, "I need you to come to my office and bring that recording." It took me 2 days to feel well enough to drive. I'd started hiding my medication in a new spot every day, rotating between different rooms, different cabinets. The pills stopped disappearing. My pain became manageable again. And with manageable pain came mental clarity. Patricia Hoffman was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. She listened to the recording in its entirety without interrupting. When it finished, she sat back in her chair and looked at me. "Mrs. Patterson, you understand what this recording represents? My children planning to steal from me while causing me physical suffering. Yes, I understand. It's elder abuse. It's theft. Potentially fraud if they'd succeeded in getting you to sign documents under duress. This is serious." "I know. What do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Did I want them arrested? Did I want them prosecuted? They were my children. Despite everything, I'd loved them their entire lives. But love isn't supposed to hurt like this. Love isn't supposed to let you suffer for profit. "I want to protect myself," I said finally. "I want to make sure they can never do this to me or anyone else. And I want them to understand what they've done." Patricia nodded. "Then here's what we're going to do. Over the next week, Patricia and I worked together. We drafted a new will. Not only did it remove Derek and Nicole as primary beneficiaries, it explicitly stated why. Every property, every account, every asset was redirected. My estate would be divided into 3 parts. 1/3 would go to Emma, Nicole's daughter, held in trust until she was 30. She'd always been a sweet girl, and she'd never shown the greed her mother and uncle displayed. 1/3 would go to various charities: the local women's shelter, the food bank, the hospital foundation where Frank had been treated. The final third would establish a scholarship fund in Frank's name for students pursuing vocational trades. Frank would have loved that. Derek and Nicole would each receive exactly $1, along with a copy of the recording and a detailed letter explaining exactly why they were disinherited. But the will was only part of it. Patricia also helped me establish an irrevocable trust for the properties, removing them from my estate entirely. She set up a healthcare directive with a third-party trustee, ensuring that neither Derek nor Nicole could ever make medical decisions for me. She helped me document everything: the missing medications, the dates, the pattern. Now, she said, comes the hard part. We need to let them think they're winning. For 3 weeks, I played the part they expected. I called them less frequently. I moved slower when they visited. I complained more about the pain, about my confusion, about how hard it was to manage everything alone. Derek, predictably, jumped at the opportunity. "Mom, I really think we need to talk about getting you some help, maybe someone to manage your finances, your medications, your appointments. You've been forgetting so much lately." "Have I?" I asked, letting my voice quaver just slightly. "You have. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to everyone eventually. But I'm worried about you." What an actor he was. If I hadn't heard the recording, I might have believed him. "I don't know, Derek. I've always handled things myself." "I know, Mom. But wouldn't it be easier to have someone help? Someone you trust? I could take care of everything. We could set up a power of attorney, just temporary, just until you're feeling better." "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. I am so tired. I could practically see the dollar signs in his eyes. 2 days later, he came back with papers. Official-looking documents printed on thick paper. Power of attorney papers, just like he'd promised. But these gave him control of everything: my accounts, my properties, my healthcare decisions, everything. "If you could just sign here, Mom, and here, and initial here." I picked up the pen, let my hand tremble slightly. "Derek, honey, I'm not sure I understand all this legal language." "It's fine, Mom. It's just standard stuff. It just lets me help you manage things while you're not feeling well. That's all. That's all." As if stripping me of autonomy and stealing my life savings was standard stuff. "You know," I said, setting down the pen, "I think I'd like my lawyer to look at this first, just to make sure I understand everything." Derek's face tightened. "Mom, that's really not necessary. This is straightforward, and honestly, the lawyer fees would just be a waste of your money. Still, I'd feel more comfortable, just to be safe." "Mom." His voice had an edge now. "Are you saying you don't trust me? I'm your son. I'm trying to help you." "Of course I trust you, sweetheart. I just want to be careful. You understand, don't you?" He left shortly after that, frustrated. I waited until his car pulled away, then called Patricia. "He took the bait," I said. "Perfect. Now here's what we do next." Patricia scheduled a meeting at her office. She called Derek and Nicole separately, explaining that Mrs. Susan Patterson had some important documents to sign regarding her estate, and that their presence was required as beneficiaries and witnesses. They both agreed immediately. Of course they did. They thought they were about to get exactly what they wanted. The day of the meeting, I woke up early. I took my medication at the proper time, all of it safely stored where only I knew to find it. I dressed carefully in my best navy blue dress, the one Frank always said made me look distinguished. I did my hair, put on my pearl earrings. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 months ago, I'd been broken, desperate, suffering. Today, I was ready for war. Patricia's office was on the third floor of a modern building in downtown San Diego. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows and a long mahogany table. When I arrived, Patricia greeted me warmly and led me inside. "They'll be here in about 10 minutes," she said. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for weeks." Derek arrived first with Amber in tow. He seemed surprised to see the formal setting, the serious atmosphere. "Mom, I didn't realize this was such a big production. You feeling okay?" "I'm feeling much better, actually," I said, "much clearer." He kissed my cheek, and I allowed it. Amber sat beside him, looking uncomfortable. She kept glancing at her phone, clearly wishing she was somewhere else. Nicole arrived 5 minutes later, apologizing for being late. "Traffic was terrible. Sorry, Mom." She kissed my cheek too, and it took everything in me not to pull away. She settled into her chair, smoothing her blouse, preparing to play the role of the dutiful daughter one last time. Once everyone was seated, Patricia took her place at the head of the table. She wore a gray suit and had the kind of presence that commanded attention. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mrs. Patterson has asked me to help her with some important estate planning matters. Before we proceed with signing any documents, there are some things that need to be addressed." Derek leaned forward, his salesman's smile in full effect. "Of course. Whatever Mom needs. We're here to help in any way we can." I watched him perform his concern, his care. He was good at it. Years of sales training had taught him how to read people, how to tell them what they wanted to hear, but I knew the truth now. "Mrs. Patterson, would you like to explain, or shall I?" Patricia asked gently. I looked at my children, really looked at them. Derek with his confident smile, so sure he'd won. Nicole with her fake concern, already checking her watch as if she had somewhere better to be. Amber was still on her phone, oblivious to what was about to happen. I took a breath. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for weeks. "I know what you did," I said quietly. The room seemed to freeze. Derek's smile faltered slightly. "What?" "I know what both of you did. The medication, the planning, all of it." Nicole's face went pale. She glanced at Derek, then back at me. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about." "Let her suffer," I quoted, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "She'll sign everything over soon." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's smile disappeared completely. His face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then something like fear. Nicole gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "Those were your exact words, Derek. Yours and Nicole's. From your conversation in my kitchen 3 weeks ago, the one where you discussed stealing my medication, forcing me into agony, and taking everything I own." "Mom, you're confused," Derek started, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm not confused." My voice was sharp enough that they both flinched. Amber finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide. "I'm 72 years old and I have spinal stenosis. That doesn't make me stupid. It doesn't make me deaf. And it certainly doesn't make me willing to let my own children torture me for money." Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a small device. Mrs. Patterson recorded the conversation in question. "Would you like to hear it?" "No," Derek said quickly. "That's not necessary. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." Patricia pressed play. Their voices filled the room, crystal clear, unmistakable. "She's not going to last much longer like this. Did you see how much weight she's lost? That's kind of the point. The worse she gets, the more willing she'll be to make changes." I watched their faces as they listened to themselves plan my suffering. Watched Derek's confident facade crumble piece by piece, his jaw clenched. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Watched Nicole's eyes fill with tears. Though whether from shame or fear of consequences, I couldn't tell. She covered her mouth with her hand, as if she could somehow take back the words that were now echoing through the conference room. Amber's face had gone from confusion to horror. She stared at Derek like she was seeing him for the first time. When the recording reached the part about committing me, about documenting false evidence of dementia, Nicole let out a small sob. But Derek just sat there, stone-faced, calculating his next move even now. The recording continued. Their voices filled every corner of that conference room, leaving no doubt, no room for misinterpretation. How many good years does she really have left? Why should we wait until there's nothing left to inherit? When it finally ended, the silence was suffocating. Patricia stopped the playback and set the device on the table between us. Amber stood up slowly, her purse clutched to her chest. "I need to leave." Her voice shook. I didn't know about any of this." "Mrs. Patterson, I swear I didn't know." She looked at Derek with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure disgust. "We're done. Do you hear me? We are done." She walked out without another word, leaving Derek staring at the closed door. Smart woman, I thought. She knew when to cut her losses. "What do you want?" Derek asked finally. His voice was different now. The smooth salesman charm was gone, replaced by something bitter and defeated. "Money? Is this blackmail? Because if you think—" "Blackmail?" I almost laughed, but the sound that came out was more like a gasp. "You think this is about money? Derek, you were willing to let me suffer. Your own mother to steal money I would have given you eventually anyway. Do you understand how sick that is? How twisted?" "Mom, please." He leaned forward, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me." Nicole was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. "We made a mistake. We're so sorry. We'll make it right, I promise. We'll make it right." I turned to her. "Nicole, you watched me suffer. You knew I was in pain, that I couldn't sleep, that I could barely function, and you did nothing. Worse than nothing, you participated. You came to my house, sat on my couch, ate my food, and pretended to care while you were plotting against me." Patricia stepped in. "Mrs. Patterson has also documented everything with Adult Protective Services and her physician. She's filed a police report regarding the medication theft. Whether she pursues charges is up to her, but she has every legal right to do so." Derek stood abruptly. "This is insane. You're actually going to destroy your own family over a misunderstanding?" "I'm not destroying anything," I said calmly. "You did that all by yourselves. The moment you decided my pain was acceptable collateral damage for your greed. After everything we've done for you—" "Everything you've done for me? You took my medication. You planned to steal my assets. You were willing to commit me if I resisted. What exactly have you done for me, Derek?" He had no answer. Neither did Nicole, who was still crying into her hands. "I think we're done here," Patricia said. "You're free to leave. Mrs. Patterson's new estate documents are already filed and executed. Any attempts to contest them will be met with the full recording being submitted as evidence of elder abuse." They left without another word. Derek stormed out first, his face red with rage. Nicole lingered, trying to apologize, trying to explain, but her words were empty. They always had been. When they were gone, I sat in that conference room with Patricia and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. "Are you okay?" Patricia asked gently. "I will be," I said, and I meant it. In the weeks that followed, Derek tried calling a few times. I didn't answer. Nicole sent letters that I returned unopened. They'd made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. I changed my locks. I changed my security codes. I made sure my medication was secure and my home was mine again. Emma called me crying, asking what happened. I told her the truth. Not all of it. She didn't need to carry that burden, but enough. She apologized for her mother's behavior and promised to visit when she was home from college. She's a good girl. She'll do something meaningful with her inheritance. My health improved. With my medication secure and stress reduced, the pain became manageable. I started physical therapy, started walking again, slowly but surely. Frank's scholarship fund will start accepting applications next semester. The women's shelter named a wing after our donation. The food bank sent me a thank you letter that made me cry. Not from sadness, but from knowing that something good came from something so painful. I'm 72 years old. I've survived betrayal by the people I loved most. I've learned that family isn't always blood, and blood doesn't always mean family. And most importantly, I've learned that pain may bend you, but it doesn't have to break you. Thanks for watching.